Hallo, assalamu alaikum, good morning, khushamdi, ji ayanu, goeiemorgen.
Pagheragale, di hao, chunashume, washwale, ohio gonzaimas, guten morgen, hola, bonjour, privyet, kaifa hal, halo shumachatore, ahlan wassalan, marhaba, buna, mucho, gracias, swabiab, and a very amazing good morning to everybody who's tuned into PTV World and are watching World this morning alongside the very fantastic, the very amazing, the very superb, the very talented Shiza Hashmi
Wow.
and Shahzad Khan on a cold Tuesday morning over here in Islamabad. Hello Shiza, how are you today?
I'm absolutely great, even better after the words that you used for me. Thank you so much for being so kind early in the
Yeah,
morning.
no
Well,
problem.
likewise for you as well. I keep
Thank you
telling
very
you
much.
that you are definitely bringing all the energy and joy to the show, so thank you for doing that.
Thank you very much.
Other than that, how's the winter coming along for you so
Well, I
far?
think that the winter's coming along fine now since everybody's made sure that the heaters are on, or
Yes.
probably everybody's making sure that they've got some inverter air conditioners at their places as well. Because I think that there's only one thing which I miss in Pakistan, and that is central heating. Imagine that doesn't really matter how cold it is outside, so you can have the your likability, according to your likability, you can have the temperature of the house and you can roam around freely, probably even nange pair as well.
We
But
do have radiators in our hostel though, which is a good thing.
really?
So yeah.
But you do not have air conditioners in your
Oh
hostels,
yeah,
and the
yeah.
summer is the longest time period over here in
In
Pakistan as
Pakistan,
well. But other than
absolutely.
that, everything is fine, everything is good, everything is great, and I think it's time to rise and shine, wake and bake, get up,
Absolutely.
and be more focused about what you want to do in life.
Yes, absolutely. For everyone watching today, I really hope you have an amazing day. And also, so here's the thing, Shazad, since we're talking about winter,
Yeah.
there are 2 to 3 things which are very specific to winter and everyone is obsessed with them.
What's
So
that?
I'll just name one of them, peanuts.
Yeah.
For me, even if I wake up before sleeping, I have to have like a whole bowl of peanuts. What about you? And oranges as well sometimes.
Well, I think not peanuts for me, it's cashew nuts.
Oh,
I'm in love with
nice.
cashew nuts as well. Even though that if you kind of have a larger intake of cashew nuts, you can have higher cholesterol levels as
Yeah, yeah.
well. So you got have to be very careful. And then obviously when the day is sunny, you go up to the roof, you have your oranges with you and that black salt. And I think that it works out very fine as well.
And it's also a very traditional thing for Pakistanis to do. I really
Yeah,
enjoy.
I think this is something which we look forward to as well. But other than that, ladies and gentlemen, it's 3rd of December today,
Yeah.
2019, and it is a very important day because, while we're running towards the roof or while we're coming down, I think that there are a lot of people who actually miss out on the kind of joy we have or the kind of life we have. And it's because of the fact that today happens to be.
Well, it happens to be IDPD, ladies and gentlemen,
Yes.
International Day for Persons Living with Disabilities. And of course, United Nations sort of officiated it back in the 1990s as well.
Yes.
But here's the thing, every other year we have a different theme as well. Before we discuss today's theme, I want to take you all back, if you've been watching this as well, to last year. So Shazad, last year, what
Yep.
happened was, I think you do remember, we sort of made a different opening for the show. So there was a person who is very close to our hearts, of course, and he often comes on our show as well. He
Yeah.
opened the show for us, and I think it
Exactly.
was very inclusive, first of all, yes. And then it was very enlightening for me
Yep.
to listen to that side of the story as well. So today, of course, we're going to have all sorts of discussions too, and let's begin with the theme for today.
Yeah.
It is, improving and promoting the participation of persons living with disabilities and their leadership as well. Well, especially in terms of, SDGs.
Exactly. And ladies and gentlemen, even the Secretary General of the United Nations has actually said that, their prime motto is to leave no one behind. And I
Yeah.
think that that's the global agenda by 2030 as well, that we really do not want to miss out on anybody. But just a brief history about the day itself. And speaking about this day, which is actually dedicated to people who are actually living with disabilities, the idea actually came into being back in 1976. And then they thought that, from 1981, they're actually going to start observing a day for people who are living with disabilities. And for all of that period in between, which was 5 years long, they thought and they made sure that they
Yes.
contemplate on all of those reasons, what can be very difficult, what can make life difficult for people who are living with disabilities. And then from 1992 onwards, General Assembly resolution was adopted and the day was being observed. But in between, from 81 till 92, they say that this was a decade which was dedicated to people who were living with disabilities. But I have only one more thing to say.
Okay.
And one of our guests was very right when I was in discussion with him. I said that rather than using people living with disabilities, I would love to say people living with a different ability.
Or
And then he
special
came up
ability, yeah.
and then he came up with a notion where he said that, if we are not going to use the word disability, there will be lower acceptance in our society, and that's correct. Now, the reason why I've mentioned about society is that when we say that we want people to be inclusive, we want them to be a part of our community. I mean, when we speak about economy, when we speak about political arena, when we speak
Absolutely.
about society, I think that we want everybody to be a part of our society. So to do that, I think that this is a day where we are going to raise awareness about it.
Absolutely. And Shazad, while I do agree with you, of course, I feel like we need to bring attention to this very specific, term, people living with disabilities. But here's my side to
Yeah,
it. You know,
go ahead.
whenever we do conduct shows on people who happen to live with any sort of disabilities, I of course, you and I and everyone around us as well, we do not have any sort of differences that we think in our minds between us and people living with special needs as well.
Exactly.
But the only reason we have to bring up this topic again and again is because, there are so many times when inequality exists.
Exactly.
While, of course, there is no difference between our existences, there is definitely a difference between the type of opportunities we get. That is why we do this show, to highlight all those things that we're missing out on. And as a society, we need to learn all of these things
Yes.
to bring, all those people at par with us.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Shiza, for saying that. But ladies and gentlemen, before I introduce my guest, I think that there are a few things which I wanted to share with our audiences as well.
Yes.
So a total of 15% of people, a total of 15% of our global population is actually people living with disabilities, out of which 65% of the kids who were born with disabilities are out of school. 1% of the global population needs wheelchairs every day. And imagine that we live in a country where the infrastructure does not really support people living with disabilities, and I'm very sad about it. And that's not it. Imagine a person who was actually born with a disability is a very different case. But imagine that Pakistan is amongst those only 2 countries where polio still exists. And I think that there needs to be a lot which needs to be done.
Absolutely.
And let's introduce our guests and let's see what do they have to say about this particular day, because this is a day when we actually talk about them, when we make sure that people are going to realize what kind of needs they have and make sure that they are inclusive members of the society. So ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, one of my very favorites is wearing an amazing coat today. Always look great, make sure that he's shaved and well looking as well. So ladies and gentlemen, we're very lucky that we've actually been joined by Potohar, the Chief Executive of the Potohar Mental Health Association. He's none other than Mr. Zulkarnain. Hello, assalamu alaikum, how are you?
Fine, thank you. How are you, Shazad?
Absolutely perfect. Thank you
Thank
very
you
much
for
for
asking.
joining
Really
us.
great.
Wonderful to have you. And alongside Mr. Zulkarnain, ladies and gentlemen, we have been joined by somebody who's an expert on behavior modification. She's been a teacher. She's been affiliated with Pakistan Army, and Pakistan Army has taken a lot of initiatives to make sure that they rehabilitate people living with disabilities, and I think that it was a great initiative. She's none other than Mrs. Sobia Adnan. Hello, ma'am. Assalamu alaikum. How are you?
Fine, sir.
Thank you very much for joining us. Alongside Mrs. Sobia, ladies and gentlemen, we have been joined by somebody who is the program officer at STEP. He's none other than Mr. Asfan Yar Khatak. Hello, assalamu alaikum. How are you?
Hello, assalamu alaikum. I'm fine. Thank you so much.
Walaikum
for having
assalam,
me.
and thank you very much for joining us. And last but not the least, ladies and gentlemen, the panel would have been incomplete if we didn't have a psychologist on board. So thankfully, we have a psychologist on board as well, and she's none other than Miss Halima S. Qureshi. Hello, assalamu alaikum. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for
very
having
much,
me.
and good morning to everybody. Thank you very much for taking out time. It is a very important day today, Zulkarnain Saab. How important it is for you? 3rd December 2019, International Day for People Living with Disabilities.
Thank you, Shazad, having me in the show. It's very important, first of all, because usually people don't highlight the issues. We are busy in our day-to-day routine. It's very important because in this specific day, we usually talk about all kind of issues, which those issues are, whether those are started from the home or from the state, from the society, all whole range of issues, and we discuss those issues. For me, it's not all about discussing issues. What I believe if we discuss issues, we should come up with the solution. So that's why we usually highlight not only the issues, we came up with different solutions and inclusive practices. That's why it's very important, and it's important to educate people, educate society, and it's also important to in this specific day we educate our legislators to increase the political and all kind of participation of people living with disabilities and promote their leadership qualities.
Very rightly said, very rightly said. And that is why you're here as well, Mr. Zulkarnain, because if you cannot provide solutions, at least you suggest a lot of things, and we love hearing those. So here's the thing. We are now going to discuss the theme. I'm going to repeat it for all of you again. Promoting the participation of persons with disabilities and their leadership, taking action on the 2030 Development Agenda.
And the
What do you
agenda is that, everybody needs to be
Yeah,
part of
leaving
this
no one
community,
behind. So I want all of you, to tell me, how do you decide for this theme? So let's start with you, ma'am.
It's not the matter of one day
Absolutely.
that we are celebrating. It's the matter of every hour and every minute. So, keeping in view the theme, I believe that we should form them that they should be regarded as a blessing. And it's a teamwork.
Yes.
On not only one person, and the blame game cannot make us successful. What we are doing, that's the most important thing. So as I have been working 23 years in the field and in different 19 countries, what I have seen in Pakistan is the lack of acceptance and assessment. Over assessment is done which is not correct. Sometimes it's, in the case of autism, if I talk about autism, most of the children are not properly diagnosed, and acceptance. And home reach plan should be applied here also. As you told that 65% are still in homes.
Yeah, imagine that.
So the contribution of Pak Army is also, they are participating. 22 schools are run by Pak Army, and they are trying to reach the children, and
Right,
we are
and
trying
facilitate
to
them as well.
facilitate.
Very
And that's
nice.
great, which is why I'm going to move on to Mr. Asfan as well over here. So, Mr. Asfan, first of all, I would like to know, how difficult is your life, living with disability, whether it is difficult or not, or whether it was difficult initially, and then you came across a support system which made sure that you're going to have dedication within your own self, and you'll be motivated towards living a better life. Let's go.
Before, you just mentioned in your promo that 15% of the population is living with disabilities.
Exactly.
Right.
So how a world can go in a peaceful way if you ignore 15% of the population of your country or your world by if they didn't contribute in your progress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a country didn't go through the proper world. As you asked from me, that I have faced a lot of problems in my early stages, as my family know that he have with the physical disability and he can't run very well. So most of our relations, family people said that we should have to make them in for a tailor shop because he can't go to the school, he can't study. So the problem begins from the first day. When I grew up, when I started my education journey, then I came to know that no, I am a perfect human being. Only the systems and the accessibility environment have problems in the mind. So basically the attitude of the behavior and attitude of the pupil who's looking for the person with disability is very harmful. So we should have to overcome on these kind of issues, especially on the attitudinal behavior and environmental behavior. If we mitigate these kind of barriers, we are good human beings.
That is very nice. Thank you for saying that. And I think you were really right when you mentioned that you feel like you yourself are a normal person. And I should tell everyone out there, he really is. He's also a gentleman. You know, I was coming up the stairs, Shahzad, and of course I was wearing my heels and it was really hard for me. And then of course he was, we were sharing the stairs at the same time. And of course, he gave me way and everything. And he was also helping Mr. Zulkarnain to come here as well, which really makes us all realize that there's literally no difference. And you very rightly pointed out that the problem is with the system, not with you, which is why I need to move on to you, ma'am, being a psychologist. The first rejection, not even denial, of course, denial is something else. The first rejection comes straight away from your family, from your friends around you, from your, extended family. I mean, before you even go out in the society, you feel such kind of things, you face such kinds of criticism. How do you deal with that?
Actually, first of all, I would like to thank you for such a lovely topic that you have invited
Our
me over
pleasure.
here. And the thing we are talking about, as Mr. Aswant has mentioned over here as well, that he was going through some of the psychological, we can say, the up and downs of the situation which the society was proposing him, which the society, even the most closest people in his life, the family, the prime support system, was actually rejecting that part of his disability, or his unable to do some things as usually people are going to do.
Right.
So this thing is, first the family is going through some shock, because the disability has some phases, 6 to 7 phases. The psychologically everyone go through these phases. Not only the person with disability is going through these phases, but the family and the support system also went through all of these phases. And the first stage is shock. Either the person is in the shock and the family is in the shock as well. And that shock leads towards the denial of the things, and that denial is going to exaggerate the worriness and anxiety. And in that anxiety, when family is unable to handle that anxiety, cope that anxiety, because we are not psychologically well established, because our society is not very much aware about their psychological well-being.
Yeah, exactly.
We usually don't work on our psychological well-beings. That is the point where the person with disability is going to be shattered by the psychological imbalance, and the family is going to mishandle these things, because they are not able to cope the criticism of the society they are going to have about the person they are having in their family.
True.
So these are the things, I guess, they have to suffer from.
And I guess that's great, and
Yeah.
it pretty much, ladies and gentlemen, gives us a summary of how people actually think in the first place when they figure out that there might be something wrong with their daughter or with their son as well. But right now what we're going to do is that we're actually going to share experiences of people from all over the world, and let's see what they have to say. Let's take a listen.
I feel so blessed to be able to just live my life and have people be motivated by it.
and fabulous, as I like to say, because yes, I see myself as being fabulous.
There is the black and white, there's the bad and there's the good. So as long as you're focusing on the good, then the bad just seems to melt away.
We're only given one life, and you got to be proud of it.
So everyone's beautiful, ladies and gentlemen, and there's no doubt that everyone is beautiful. And after listening to all of what they have to say, I think that everybody who's out there or probably is suffering from a disability as well, I think that there was a very strong message embedded within this video,
Yes.
that no matter what happens, you can still have a good life. All you have to do is grow into it. And I think that the very acceptance will actually help you move on in your life as well. But very quickly, I want to move on to you, Ms. Salim, over here. And so what I want to know is that for whatever they have said, it is about people who are actually going to come and see them. It's not about people themselves. So they're more worried about whoever's actually going to look at us might think different about us. And this is something which I realized myself, that whenever you see a person with disability, you're very empathetic, you show empathy towards them as well.
Sympathy, not
And
empathy.
I think that sympathy and empathy comes hand in hand as well. And I think that empathy is a better word to use rather than sympathy for people who are living with disabilities. But yes, I will agree to what you said as well. How do you think that we can train people who are perfectly normal and behave like this with people who are living with disabilities?
True. Actually, this is the case when we are sitting somewhere and there are no mirrors around. I can see myself through your eyes. If you are going to define how I am sitting. If there is no mirror, then only the only source is other people around.
Exactly.
And if there is a mirror, then what that thing is going to do, that it is going to reflect how I am looking right now. So what other people used to do is that to try to accommodate or try to facilitate the other person, they just pose or they just share the things which are that much hurtful, which they are unable to see by themselves, that what they are saying, how they are being reflected upon. They are unable to see the reflection of their words on the other person, because they are just saying it and there is no reflection back towards that. So if people just start to be sensitive about the words they are using, about the things they are saying to other people, and they just imagine that what they are saying to other, what they will feel themselves if someone is sharing that much of sympathy every day, every minute, everyone is coming around and they are looking at them with a pity or with the thing that they need help and they need support. So this is such a tiring job for a person to be sitting somewhere and everyone is showing pity and all these things.
And this is something which they do not like. So they obviously want to be dealt as people deal with other people. I mean, and I think that there's no harm in it as well. But very quickly, before Shiza wants to ask a question, I want to move on to Ms. Sobi over here as well. So Ms. Sobia, you've been working for different schools which are affiliated with Pakistan Army. And before the show, you were mentioning that you've actually trained a lot of kids who were living with disabilities, even though that you went to an extent that those kids were able to bring gold medals back to Pakistan from different countries as well. So we would like to know, how did you help them in progressing and making sure that they do not have a mental barrier?
So that it's a power of mind in which I believe. And the question you asked before, that how we can cooperate and improve all that, the answer to that is inclusive education. We have to, all over the world now, inclusion is promoting, everybody's promoting inclusion. And I have been studying in convent with disabled. So that's why I was a kid when I started working, and I have an acceptance. So it's my personal experience that inclusion is the best solution.
Agreed.
The more the disabled and able people will live together, they both will learn. We don't. We not only have to improve their morale and their motivation. We also have to work on able person like us, so that we should also accept them, and we should learn how we can go on with them without leaving them behind. So inclusive school and inclusive education is the best solution for that.
Yes, exactly. And I think, ma'am, like you said, that you as a kid were also sort of, brought up in a society. You had people around you who had special needs. Probably that is why you were really open to the idea of it. But the hard truth of our society, ladies and gentlemen, is, and I think you all will agree, imagine yourself in a market or somewhere, and if a person with any sort of disability, let's say physical, of course, if they cannot get up the stairs or something, and there's no ramp for them, of course, usually that happens as well. There's no inclusive infrastructure. Rather than, making it normal or probably helping them out or probably, suggesting even someone to build a ramp, at least 10 to 15 people are going to just stand there, gather around and, pity them and sympathize, and then probably one or two are going to help them. This very behavior, I do not like. I really don't want to see this anywhere. So moving on to you, Mr. Zulkarnain, as ma'am very rightly said, this is all about inclusion and normalizing it. Where do you think we as a society are in terms of that?
Okay, we as a society are very, very, very much, we have I must say, we have different kind of mindset. First, where if you talk about disability, parents started discriminating them.
Okay.
Two things happens when a kid living with disability born in any home. First, parent think he or she will not perform those gender
Roles that we
gender
want.
rules that we are fixed with. First, second, their expectation has been broken up that he or she will earn for us in later age. First, second thing is, you know, when a kid born with any kind of disability, or children with living with disabilities, right? What happens? They grew up, their family, they they throw their own belief stereotypes on them.
Okay.
Second, our infrastructure stamp this, I'm saying stamp this thing,
Yeah.
okay, you cannot move. Our educational institutions are not accessible.
Yep.
That's why we cannot say okay, inclusive education. Third, our mindset reflect over here, right. I'm giving you two examples, able body and disabled body. This mindset needs to be changed. We have different needs. No one is able or disabled. It's the environment. It's the issue of the society. It's the issue of the, and these issues could be resolved through proper and strong legislation.
Yes, agreed.
No one can make accountable to any institution because there is no strong legislation to make them accountable. I would like to mention one thing over here.
Yes.
In some part of our country, especially in Sindh, that they have good piece of legislation. Balochistan the Assembly have passed their legislation. GB has adopted. But in Punjab, legislation is in process. But Article 25 of the Constitution,
Yep.
that says all citizens are equal above the law. Right?
Absolutely.
And when it talks its second parts, it says women, transgender, blah blah blah, and it doesn't talk about disability. That reflects our mindset. Whatever we are doing, right? We are doing, and if our constitutional, we don't build this thing in our constitution, then these are cosmetics measures.
Exactly.
We need to incorporate, we need to eliminate those institutional barriers.
Yeah.
First. Second part is, because we usually, we are doing legislation, but we need to eliminate infrastructural barrier and attitudinal barriers.
Exactly.
Attitudinal barriers can be eliminated only, there are two ways. One is through media, we should promote the rules, positive
trying to
role
do that,
model.
Yeah.
You people are, and I must appreciate PTV because you people do give must due credit to the issue. That's really appreciable.
Thank you.
And usually I avoid other medias because they sometimes they use different. They don't give that much credit. Second thing is, without political inclusion,
Yeah.
we cannot bring remarkable difference.
Exactly.
Course.
And political inclusion, because mainly political parties are engine of change, and real change occurs through political inclusions, and then it comes to attitudinal inclusion and all kind of social
And
inclusion.
Zulkarnain bhai, we definitely want to talk about that, but the point you've raised that the Article 25 in the Constitution does not really speak about people living with disabilities.
Yeah.
And I think that it is high time, ladies and gentlemen, that we actually include them, people living with disabilities, in our political arena as well, so that all of these voices are heard. Because every now and then we do see, I'm sorry that I have to say that, I have to be honest with my job, but we do see that the Constitution is being amended for the mighty, but then at the same time, Constitution is not being amended for people who really need it. So I think that this is about high time that we really realize that people who are living with disability, it's not that they're not educated. I mean, I've seen people who've done PhDs, I've seen people who are doctors, I've seen people who are psychologists, I've seen people from every walk of life and are disabled at the same time, but are living a great life. But for us, I think it is about high time that we realize that we really need to include them and make them a part of our society and our community.
Well, Shahzad, I do agree with you, but when you say that it's high time, I don't understand one thing. I mean, human population has been on this planet for thousands of years. I do not understand in 2019, in the 21st century, why do we have to be the people to talk about inclusion and everything?
Exactly.
But ladies and gentlemen, we do need to head out to a very, very tiny break, but when we come back...
Yeah, but we're not going right now. We're going to go after 30 seconds and the... And the sole reason, Shiza, why I say that it is about high time is when I see this disparity amongst, our citizens. And the only reason why I'm speaking about this disparity is that imagine that Mrs. Zulkarnain over here very rightly mentioned that there's nothing which states about the rights of the people who are living with a disability. But then at the same time, the constitution is being amended for people who are mighty. And I think that this is a shame for all of us.
Absolutely.
And I'm sorry if I speak a little more about it, but I think that this is something which we really need to put our heads to rather than amending the constitution for somebody else.
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely.
Let's go for a break.
Welcome back to World This Morning with Shahzad Khan and Shiza Hashmi, ladies and gentlemen, on a very pleasant winter morning, where today we thought of a topic that is, of course, very close to our hearts. We do keep talking about it as well. We want to educate you, and it's never enough, thus we're talking about it again. Today happens to be the 3rd of December, IDPD, International Day for Persons Living with Disabilities.
Exactly. And ladies and gentlemen, before going towards the break, we were actually in conversation with Mr. Zulkarnain, where he very rightfully pointed out that the Constitution does not include anything about people living with disabilities. And hence, we reached to a point where we said that obviously we need political representation of all of these people, and that has to be from amongst them. But then there was only one thing which came across my head, whether anybody who's living with disability has contested in an election or not. And I think that this is a question for Mr. Aswan. I'm going to come back to you, Mr. Zulkarnain, but you have to hold your thoughts right now. Mr. Aswan, please.
I think law didn't stop you to contest the election. But before going to the election, I was the person who submitted my documents in last year in general election 2018,
Yep.
and in the capital of Islamabad. When I go to the election RO's office in A54, that was on third floor.
Yeah.
And for every floor, you should have to cross 40 stairs.
Okay.
So it's around 120 stairs. You should have to cross them and then enter into his office, and then you have to collect your nomination papers.
Yeah.
So this is the process. We are facing the inaccessible environment.
All
and then
right.
I go there, the attitudinal behavior say, oh, why you are contesting election? Go and just sit in your home. That's the actually. And then I came back, let's we go for the election day. More 98% of the polling stations are not accessible for even for the physical disabled person. We are not talking about the visually impaired and the hearing impaired person. We are talking
Exactly.
about the physically impaired person who is very easy to just make a ramp, establish a ramp, and that's it. Give him pathway, special pathway, that's it. But mostly 98% of the polling stations were not accessible in the last general election, 2018. So how I will contest my election?
So what you're trying to say is that rather than contesting, it is even hard for you to go and vote
Go
for
and to what?
the leader you want to win. Okay,
Yeah.
so I think that this is something which we really need to put our heads to
Right,
as well.
most definitely.
And yeah, since we've been talking about online polls and whatnot, I think that we really need to use some newer technologies.
Yeah.
All right, so now I need to move on to,
Can I-
Mr. Zulkarnain, please add.
Because we are saying nothing about us without us, right? If we are not there, nothing right base can be achieved. So and second thing is because whatever postal ballot were introduced, but process were cumbersome.
Yeah.
Even Aswan was talking about infrastructural barrier.
Yeah.
I go beyond that.
Okay.
First, when you got a nomination paper, those nomination papers were not accessible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Election Commission's website, except its first page, rest of the website is not accessible.
All right.
And even if you're saying even ballot paper is not accessible because the ballot symbols are not embossed on the ballot paper. One cannot ballot it. Signages are not installed. If you go with the, if I talk about people living with visual impairment or with people living with hearing impairment or people living with sensory impairment, those people were excluded because that's the thing which needs to be,
Yeah, please go
highlighted.
on.
Yeah.
And the second part is
You always have a second part in your conversation. I think that's
second
great.
second part here because when first the part one cannot complete the
Yes, please go on.
issues.
Yeah, go
and,
ahead.
second part is it's usually it's the not only the mindset, it's the traditional conservative
True,
practices.
absolutely true.
And those practices are real hindrances, and it's access to the resources. If you include people living with disabilities in political arena, or if you do legislative measures, take legislative measures, it means they have access to the resources, and that is the issues.
Exactly. Thank you
Right.
very much for saying that. But I think that's not the issue. I
Okay.
think that the system we're living in, the system is not correct.
Correct,
The system
yes.
is corrupt. Because while you were saying that you actually had to go to the third floor,
Yeah.
The only thing which I could remember was that the ex-Prime Minister of Pakistan, Mia Mohammad Nawaz's wife, was in England, and she contested in an election from Lahore, I guess, and she won. So imagine that she didn't actually had to be there. So this is what I was saying, that the system
Right.
works for the mighty, and the system does not work for people who really need your assistance.
I do agree with you, but very quickly, we're
I'm
so
losing my
short on
temper a
time.
little bit here,
Aswan, I do want to
Yeah,
get
should
to
I
you,
have
but
you?
before that, very quickly, Ms. Sobi and Ms. Salima, I want to ask you about the behavioral training and mental training of the people not only living with disabilities, but the other people as well, how they need to take them. Because, even parents who have autistic kids, they send them to normal schools. And of course, every other day they have different types of behaviors and
Yeah.
seizures and whatnot. And if the teacher complains that please send them to a proper school, they are in a rejection mode. Let's start with you, ma'am.
The basic need is behavior modification clinics should be in every hospitals. Recently, Sialkot CMH have taken the initiative,
Okay.
and chromotherapy, sensory integration, and all have been started there.
Wow.
Even chromotherapy, I haven't seen in Islamabad yet. So the behavior modification clinic is the best solution for the education and counseling of parents and mothers to be.
All
And
right.
they should be, because prevention is the best solution.
Yeah.
So first we should start from the core area, that we should try to prevent. How we can campaign, we can start campaign on that. We, as I talk about the home reach plan, even the polio is not accessible for, polio drops are not accessible, and we are talking about behavior modification. But before that, we have to change the behavior issues and deals with them.
Yeah.
Then we can go on with the education. The girls, proper subjects should be included. Special education is the least bothered, I think,
Looked upon, yeah,
looked
of
upon.
course.
Nobody comes for that. So when I go for trainings, I always in schools like Beacon House and city schools, that we should tell our children that they should also choose this subject.
Exactly. And that's great. But thank you very much for being with us. It was lovely to be in conversation on such an important day. Thank you very much once again, and make sure that you continuously strive to make your lives better alongside the other ones as well. But thank you very much once again. And for people who are out there, ladies and gentlemen, we've made sure that we raise awareness, and we'll keep on doing that no matter what happens.
True.
No matter how hard or how high the barriers are. Me and Shiza and our entire team over here at PTV World will strive for excellence and make sure that everybody is an honorable part of our society.
Most definitely. So I really hope you guys learned something from today's show. Please write to us to let us know on our Facebook page with the name of
World This Morning.
On Twitter.
World This Morning without a G.
Daily Motion on YouTube.
World This Morning, World This Morning.
And the repeat you can catch
5
at
past 11 p.m. tonight. Till the next time, 1, 2, 3.
Good
Good
morning.
morning. Thank you very much.